Hello, and welcome to the BostonHMIS Window into the Warehouse Basic User Training. Window into the Warehouse access is only granted to users at agencies which have joined the Boston Homeless Assistant Network provider list. As well as being an agency that has joined our network, you must also have a user role that pertains to either front door triage, rapid rehousing, coordinated access to permanent housing, or be an HMIS administrator at your agency. Please remember that the data that you see in the window into the warehouse is first read-only and comes from your source HMIS systems. Second, that this information is being shared amongst providers in order to provide and coordinate services for our clients. The information that is shown on the client dashboard is basic information about a client in order to correctly identify that that client has already been in our system, that this is information around their name, their social security number, and date of birth, and then also information about their program enrollments and their bed night history. Additional information regarding personal protected information and health information may be viewable if a client has signed a Homeless Assistance Network release form, which may also be called a HON release form. Per the Boston Homeless Assistance Network provider agreement, we are allowed to share client primary identifying information and their program enrollments and other services that they have received from partner agencies without a consent from a client. The information that you're going to see today in this window training is actually going to be data that is in our staging site, so that you will not be seeing out in public view actual client names and information. However, the backend data behind it is very similar to what a client's program enrollment may look like. User access to Windows is granted by your agency's HMIS site administrator. They will complete the required information themselves at your agency level and then forward it on to either the HMIS administrator or the HMIS coordinator at the City of Boston. In order to access the window into the warehouse, you'll first log in to the warehouse itself. So it's hmis.boston.gov. Your sign-in information will be auto-generated from the warehouse once you've been an approved user. So you'll get an automatic link in your email box, which will bring you in there in order for you to set up your password. So again, I'm just going to change screens right now and go into our staging website. Everything here looks exactly the same as it does in the main website, just so that you know. When you first log in, you'll be brought here to this very basic client search page. You can search for a client by name, by their social or their date of birth, or you can also search by partial name. I actually know one of the clients who was in here, so I've already looked at his screen. So here, if you do a partial name search, you may get a list of a whole heck of a lot of clients that come on down here. So we show you some basic information here so that you can make sure that you've got the correct client that you're looking at. So I'm just going to pop right in here now to the client's dashboard. And again, this is just a basic tour. There's nothing for you to do here in the system. This is view only. I just want to kind of point out some key pieces of information for you. So here, first, basic info and programs. The first date that they've been seen in our system, whether it be an actual bed night in a shelter or it may just be a service in one of our programs that contributes their data to HMIS. Their last seen, that would be the most recent date that we had any kind of record for them. The agency in which they were last seen, or agency and program, depending. Are they a veteran? And do they have some type of a disabling condition? Document ready, there will be a separate training coming up very soon on our file upload feature. This is still in process at the moment. We're making a few tweaks, but there will be a spot here for you to upload all of your documents so that not only your one agency can have access to this for a client, but all partner agencies who happen to be working with a client may have access to some of this information. A client picture. This comes from, again, the agency's front-end systems, and most of the time this is if you're an agency that has ID cards that are using barcode scanning, mostly for their emergency shelter programs. Up here, aliases. These are the different names that a client goes by at different agencies. And we'll get into a little bit more of that as we scroll down here. Consent form on file, right now we have none. This will change based on if it's a full HON release or if it's a partial HON release, or what may also be called a limited HON release. So we move in here to the demographics section, and it is exactly what it says it is, right? It's their basic primary client identifiers, so that we know that the person who's standing in front of us is the person that we're looking for here in our system. Few pieces of information to remember about this. Number one, this warehouse code. When you hover over it, you see that it says the data from this row is what is used in reporting. So the fancy magic computer logic behind the warehouse has determined that from all the other information from the different agencies that we have, that this seems to be the most concrete and real information about this client. So when you see aggregate reports from the city, whether it be a daily census report or maybe some basic aggregate demographics about clients who may be active in our system, it would be this piece of information about that client that we're using in those types of reports. And then as we go through each row, you can see that there's some different information here on their names. However, we can tell that by the last for their social and their date of birth, as well as some other information about them, that this really is the same client. As you hover over each of these agency little tabs here, these are the agencies in which this data is coming from. So you can see here that this is the Next Gamma Hill agency. This one here is Furious Whistle Creek and Swooping Bird Room. So when you get in your live window into the warehouse site, you will really recognize these agencies and not these fake made-up names. Not very good images here, but again, some clients do have records at multiple emergency shelters, and therefore they have multiple ID cards and pictures. So if that is the case and a client does have multiple pictures, it won't just be showed here. The picture for each individual agency will be a small little thumbnail here. Scrolling down, contact information. This is populated again from your main ETO system, and this is the contact information that is assigned to a client at the add contacts phase. There will be some other trainings on ETO software that you'll be able to listen to and watch so that you can see how to input some of the information. This contact information may be a client's phone number. It may be an emergency contact, another family member or phone number. Could be a cell phone, could be a work phone, any way that we can get a hold of the client that you, other than just at the shelter, if you have that information, please enter it into your front-end HMIS system, because it not only helps you locate a client, but other partner agencies who may also be working with that client. It will just help have consistent information across the board. Same thing here with your case manager. This information comes right from your main ETO system or your front-end system if it's not ETO. And it is, again, the assigned staff field in your front-end system. Current program enrollments. This is the program of record that we have that the client has an active enrollment in. What this means is that the client has a start date, but there is no end date for this program enrollment. There may be only one current enrollment. There may be no current enrollments for a client, because that means that they're not active in the system, or there may be multiple current program enrollments for your client. They may be active in more than one emergency shelter at a time because they spend one night here and one night there, and they may also be in an employment program, and they may also be being seen in a day shelter for certain services. Assessments on file. This comes from your front-end ETO system as well, and here will be not only the HUD touch points that are completed, whether they be an entry or an exit, but also any additional touch points that get taken for certain pilot initiatives. Thinking, front door triage assessment, maybe a separate rapid rehousing assessment. Some agencies collect employment assessments. What you will see here, and I will hopefully go find another client just so that you can see the information, is it will be the date of the assessment and the type of the assessment that was taken. At this point in time, you will not be able to access any of that assessment information. You will just be able to see that the assessment was completed. Moving on, and this is probably the meatiest section of the client dashboard, and this is the residential enrollment section. So a few key things to note here right off the bat. These blue lines that you see, these demark what HUD calls an episode, right? So the definition for chronic homelessness is that you have to be an adult, 18 or older, that is living in an emergency shelter or on the street or in a safe haven continuously for 1 year or longer, or you have had 4 episodes of homelessness in the last 3 years. An episode is defined as a break in program enrollments of 30 days or longer. That has been a Boston rule for a very long time. And it's shown in our policies and procedures around our emergency shelters that use a bed registry to record client stays every night. Our policy is that if a client has not shown up for a bed in 30 days, then that client must be exited out of that program as of the date of that last bed stay. So again, these blue lines are just a quick visualization so that you can see a client's episode groupings. So again, here we hover over, we can see which agency the client is coming from, and then the ID information also from that source ETO system or whatever front-end HMIS system you have. This next little thumbnail here, it's the program type that program is classified at. So this is an emergency shelter program. We scroll down, that's a street outreach program. Some other residential programs that you would see would be a TH for transitional housing or a PH or an RRH for permanent housing, rapid rehousing. So again, moving on, here's your program name, and then it's the agency name in which the client is at. Easy enough. Here's their start date and then their end date if there is one. If this is blank, then obviously this is the current program enrollment that we see reflected here up top. Most recent service day, again, is just that. It's the most recent day that we have in our system for either a bed night in that program or some other type of service, whether it be a case note or maybe lunch or any of the services that you are recording as providing to your clients in the program. This will be the most recent date for that. Days served here and homeless and adjusted days. These are going to be critical for our coordinated entry processes as we are really starting to tie prioritization to days homeless in the city of Boston and the Boston continuum of care. Days served is just literally the totaling up here of all the days you see per each separate program. 9 times out of 10, the days served here, your homeless days and your adjusted days should all be the same. The only time you should see any difference between your homeless and your adjusted days is if a client happens to be enrolled in 2 programs at the same time and we happen to have data that the client was in both of those programs on the same day at the same time. We know that that is not the case. You can't be in 2 places at once. So the system will kind of subtract an extra day for that. We most often see this information with clients who are enrolled in both a street outreach and an emergency shelter program. And then in particular, again, more so in the wintertime months than in the summer months. But somebody may be encountered out on the street and they get a contact from their street outreach contact, which technically counts as a homeless day if it's overnight. But then, something happens and that client then gets transported into the emergency shelter for that same night. So technically, the system would see kind of 2 different days there because we'd have a street outreach record and we'd have a bed night record. But again, really, they were only that homeless that one day. So we kind of have to take a little, slice off the top for that. Months served, again, is just that. It's a bucketing out of how these days kind of correlate to months. And the reason for that is, again, ties back to the HUD chronically homeless definition. And the chronically homeless definition states that you must have 12 months of homelessness throughout the course of either the 1 year continuous homelessness, or you must have a total of 12 months homeless in your 3 years episodic. Again, so you can scroll down here. Some clients may have very long program enrollment and residential enrollment histories. Some may not. You may only have 1 or 2 here. A couple of other things just to note as you hover over, you're probably seeing this as I jump around. If you hover over your entry, it's going to give you where they were staying the night before. And if you hover over your exit, what the destination data was for that assessment role. As we continue on scrolling down, we get to the next section here, which is other enrollments. So for the most part, these are really service-only programs, right? So the first grouping there in residential enrollments really ties down to a client's length of time homeless or length of stay in a homeless situation. These other enrollments are non-residential enrollments. They are either day shelter programs, they are employment programs, they are education programs. If you're a rapid rehousing program that we've kind of split up into a kind of pre-rapid rehousing and a housing search phase, and then also a stabilization phase, then your pre-program will show here as an other enrollment. And again, they'll be services only programs. And same thing here. The days served is literally just the difference between these entry and exit dates. I should also mention, if we go up here, in these residential enrollment programs, if this is an emergency shelter program that uses a bed register, then your days served will only be those bed register nights that a client was actually in the program. If you're a program that uses the entry-exit model, then your days served will be a calculation between the start date and the end date, or the start date and the current date that we're looking at. Again, so scrolling down, household members, if a client was enrolled at some point in time as part of a family, then you will see some other, their household members will be here as well. And then finally, scrolling through here, full bed register. Again, this is just, these are the places where they received a bed night service on each day. This was meant to document homeless history for clients. And, this is probably a really great example here of those homeless and adjusted days. Client can't be in 2 places at once, so we really only count 1 of these as a day instead of 2 of them per day. So this is again, the end of the basic first tab of the client window into the warehouse. I do want to show you tab number 2, which for me is my favorite part of the client window. And this is really just a calendar of services for your client. So we've got a few little keys here, right? So we're going to tell you which project type they're in. Anything that's kind of got this dark blue background is their start date. If it's a light gray background, then those are days that they received services, whether it be an actual bed night service, if it's an emergency shelter, or maybe it's a day program service and they happen to drop in for lunch that day. And then anything that has kind of this reddish background there is their exit date from that program. And then finally, we're really tying this down to the first time a client took a bed in our shelter system historically. So one thing to note about this client calendar is it starts off with the current or the most recent month that a client has a service in, and then goes backwards. So you'll want to scroll down. You can see, no information here. They haven't been active for some time. And now we've got another enrollment for, 2 weeks in this other shelter program. There's some more here. And back here in March of 2015, This client was fairly active on both the streets and the emergency shelter program, so we can see on each day which programs each client was in. So again, this is your basic window tour. It's fairly self-explanatory. We will go into, there will be a separate training on file uploads, like I said earlier, as soon as we're finished doing some updates to it. But again, so you should be using the window into the warehouse for a whole host of reasons. It's maybe a client you've received an email that a client has a housing match through the CAS system, and now you need to find them. Come in here to the window into the warehouse, find out where they were last seen at, contact that agency. Their contact information for those case managers should be there on file. Maybe a client has a rapid rehousing match, or you want to do a front door triage assessment on them, or you're not sure if you need a DD-214 already for this veteran. The window into the warehouse will also be that repository for all of this information for you. So it's hopefully your one-stop shop as to what's kind of happening with your client as they're sitting in front of you at each of the different agencies that they may be touching in the city of Boston. So again, my name is Jennifer Flynn. I'm the HMIS administrator. I can be reached at jennifer.flynn@boston.gov with any questions or concerns, or you may contact your HMIS site manager as well.